Hello and welcome to this Citrix and Microsoft Azure and Citrix Better Together session. This session is a sales session to help you understand the value of Citrix and Azure together in order to give better experiences for your customers. My name is Alex Hill, I'm Partner Recruitment Manager for the UK, and I'm joined by Tom Hickling. Tom, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes, hello, so I'm Tom Hickling, as mentioned. I'm a cloud solution architect working in the Azure Hypo program, which is helping large organizations to deploy workloads into Azure.
Excellent, thank you, Tom. So the purpose of today's session, as I say, is to explain very clearly how Citrix and Azure work together, specifically around Citrix Cloud and XenApp and XenDesktop, and the value of putting those two solutions together for you and your customers. We're going to start off with just recapping on Azure and Citrix Cloud, and then we'll move on to two very basic areas that you can go and talk to about your customers, whether the customer is an existing Microsoft Azure customer or an existing Citrix customer who wants to move over to Azure as well. So I want to make it very easy for you to pick this up today. Obviously, this is the beginning of your journey picking up these solutions, and we'll be building on some of these solutions with you as we work with you jointly between Citrix and Microsoft. So really it's all about you as our partner, Citrix and Azure, giving the best solutions to your customers. Obviously, as Tom's going to cover in a moment, Azure is the best-in-class public cloud infrastructure for you to go and move those workloads, those infrastructures across to for your customers from their on-premise solutions. And at Citrix, we have the best-in-class hosted business services, so the ability for you to deliver those apps and desktops back from Azure to your customers to give them a great user experience, consistency, and to be able to help mobilize their businesses as well. And together with you, as a Citrix and Microsoft partner, you're able to deliver these world-class solutions into your customers. So to begin with, I'll just hand over to Tom, who's going to help take you through a little bit more info on Azure. Tom?
Yes, thank you. So, what is Azure then? So, Azure, as was mentioned, is the leading public cloud provider. We have over 100 individual data centers that are consolidated into 42 regions. And this picture is illustrating where those locations are. So we've got data centers or regions located closer to your users, connected by the world's third largest network. Now that combination of infrastructure and network is larger than AWS and Google combined. So this is just illustrating the billions of dollars worth of investment that Microsoft has put into Azure to provide the infrastructure to support our joint customers in their journey into Azure. Now as this slide shows, there's a plethora of services, individual services that's available from Azure. The point of this slide is just to show that there's so much componentry available inside of Azure for building applications, whether it's mobile apps, whether it's containers, service fabric, etc., etc., etc. In terms of Citrix workloads on Azure, we're going to be looking at the infrastructure services. So things like virtual machines, networking, storage, all of the typical components that are required to deploy a Citrix implementation anywhere for that matter, but obviously typically in Azure. And typically what we see customers particularly interested in when deploying Citrix workloads into Azure is the number of virtual machine families and individual VM sizes that are available for you, the partner, or directly for the customer to deploy to their users. Now, typically organizations try to keep the number of virtual machine sizes that they enable internally in a Citrix product to a small number, maybe 3, maybe 5, just in order to keep their lives simple. Now, what Azure brings is this ability to have any one of around 12 to 13 individual VM families, which are all designed for very specific workloads, starting from our smallest, which is our A series, all the way up to our large instances, like the SAP HANA workloads. Now, each one of these virtual machine families is designed for a specific workload, And within each of these families, there's multiple sizes of those. So for example, the DV2 series has 15 individual sizes within it. So the point here is that you can be providing workloads to your customers from any one of these VMs. So if there's a specific project or specific workload that requires a specific VM, then you can provide that in exactly the same time that it takes to deploy any one of these machines. Now that typically is around 5 to 6 minutes, and that's a compelling reason that's essentially impossible to do outside of the public cloud.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tom. So obviously, Azure is going to be the main goal of customers going forward. As they move their workloads across to the Azure solution, they get the benefits of scalability. What does that mean for virtual apps and desktops? What are the options for a Citrix customer who's already existing, or a net new Citrix opportunity that you may have within your customers as well? Well, the first thing is, for an existing customer, they can extend their existing deployments of Citrix products, be it XenApp or XenDesktop, or the Citrix Cloud services, the app and desktop services, XenApp and XenDesktop service from Citrix Cloud. They can extend those into Azure. So by utilizing some of the features and functions that we'll go into shortly, we can actually start to utilize Azure consumption, but also have some consumption remaining on-premise with an eye to moving that completely into Azure as well. Equally, we can take our existing infrastructures within customers, our existing deployments of XenApp and XenDesktop, and deploy those into Azure. We've got scalability, we've got guides on how to do that, and it's a proven technology to work in Azure and deliver back the app and desktop to the user wherever the user may be. But actually, we now have the third and probably the most a compelling solution for customers, which is the Citrix Cloud service sat in Azure as well. So this is using our Citrix Cloud solution with the XenApp and XenDesktop service, and then using Azure as the resource location, as we call it, to go and put the workloads in. And this is the most optimal solution for our customers. It's the solution that a lot of customers are moving towards as we jointly engage in the field with Citrix and Microsoft into our customers. It's the preferential solution that customers pick up and move to, whether they're net new or existing customers that we're talking to as well. But equally, have the three solutions all work on Azure, all are proven to work, and all are supported jointly by Citrix and Microsoft as solutions that we can deploy into Azure using Citrix. Now, it's worth kind of taking some time here to understand what we're doing with Citrix Cloud. And for those of you not familiar, hopefully you are already, but if not, Citrix Cloud is our management platform and our deployment platform for our traditional products. Equally, there are new products going to the solution all the time, but really focusing in today, we're looking at the XenApp and XenDesktop service. And this allows us to run a cloud-based management solution for our XenApp and XenDesktop deployments. But we still need to go and deploy what we call the workloads, which are the servers and infrastructure and workloads that actually go and run the app or the desktop for the user into a solution. Now, most customers, when they look at Citrix Cloud, if they're existing Citrix customers or net new, will be looking at deploying those workloads into a public cloud solution. And of course, the most optimal public cloud solution for Citrix Cloud is going to be Azure. We've got the scalability, we've got the testing, and we've got a lot of tools to help you migrate those customers across. So it's a great opportunity when you're talking to your customers around Citrix Cloud to talk to them about putting their workloads into Azure, moving those workloads potentially across from an on-premise solution, migrating them across, or for a net new customer, building out into Azure, into a solution based on Azure as well. And actually this means then we're going to be able to go and use Citrix Cloud, as you can see here, to deploy those workloads into Azure, to manage those workloads in Azure, and we can actually start to then move across multiple Azure locations. As Tom said earlier, they have the breadth and the reach to have Azure locations close to wherever your or the customer's workers are. So it means we can start to deploy those workloads, those apps, all those desktops to where it needs to be to give the user the best experience. Whether you've got users in Europe, in the US, or in Asia, we can use Citrix Cloud to deploy those apps and those desktops to the relevant Azure location closest to those users, and also deploying what is needed at those points into those locations to help keep costs optimal. Now obviously we are not with Citrix Cloud selling the Azure consumption, that's something that you still put together for the customer as their trusted advisor, as their trusted partner. You can manage it on their behalf, but we drive a lot of consumption into your Azure workloads as well, so we get great return for you on deploying those into Azure as well. We can also optimize those deployments with some of the tools that we cover in other sessions aligned to today's session as well, around smart scale, being able to deploy and consume only what we need in the Azure infrastructure as and when it's needed. So we don't necessarily have to drive up those costs. We can optimize those costs for your customers as they deploy into an Azure architecture as well. And equally, actually, the Citrix Cloud Services ideal customer very closely matches the perfect Azure customer as well. Obviously, the customer has to favor cloud. They're probably looking at an IT department that has limited IT resources, either by budget constraints or by strategy, in terms of outsourcing, moving a lot of these infrastructures into a cloud. They want to move to more of an OpEx model and avoid CapEx. They're looking to modernize IT to take advantage of the scalability and the agility that Azure and public cloud gives them. If they're a Citrix customer, they could be facing a Citrix upgrade or a maintenance renewal of some description, so we could capture them. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. They could have multiple Citrix solutions. They could have Zen App and Zen Desktop. They could also have Zen Mobile or some of our other technologies that we can help to manage more effectively. There are now localizations, but only European localizations, so a lot of this will have to be managed by an English-speaking team, but also that they're demanding and need a fast implementation. Now, obviously, Citrix Cloud can facilitate, to a certain extent, a fast implementation of our products through the technologies that we have, but also Azure can help to even optimize that and accelerate that even further with some of the pre-build, some of the guides that we have that we'll talk about in a second as well. So we'll talk about, but Tom, can you just explain a little bit more about why Citrix and Azure as well at this point?
Yeah, exactly. It's also perhaps worthwhile rephrasing the question to what does Azure bring to a Citrix workload? And here's just a few sort of top of mind bullet points to address that question. Obviously, Microsoft and Citrix have had an engagement and a relationship for 25 plus years. Going back to the days of terminal services and WinFrame, etc. And that relationship still exists today, and if anything, it's got stronger. So there is a strong joint engagement at the top level that flows all the way down throughout the organization around optimizing Citrix products to work in our Azure data centers. And part of that is some of the products that we've seen in the Azure marketplace. So depending on what components you're deploying, there are ARM templates within Azure for deploying IaaS Citrix workloads inside of your Azure subscription. The Zen App and Zen Desktop Essentials products are available and fully transactable through the Azure marketplace. And there are specific NetScaler NVAs available in Azure Marketplace, designed specifically around Azure that you can then go and deploy into your Azure subscription. As we mentioned earlier, there's over 100 individual VM sizes that you can go and deploy within minutes with no additional admin overhead. And that does away with having to wait for weeks, if not months, for internal IT procurement to go and deploy specific individual VMs for your workers. As you also mentioned, this joint engagement exists within the field. So within both Citrix and Microsoft, there are teams working together for partners and customers and both of those in order to drive these projects forwards. And as we mentioned, we can locate desktops and applications closer to your users or the customer's users if they operate in a disparate organization. And as we mentioned, the scale of Azure is phenomenal. So not only can we get resources closer to your users, but we can scale out within these regions based upon project demands. So if you have, or your customer has a merger, or just they're having great success with individual products, using either the Citrix tools or the Azure tools, you can scale out capacity based upon that demand. And of course, the customer will only be paying for what they're consuming. So in like manner, if they start to scale down, then their bill would reflect that fact. And as that last point says, those consumption charges are now down to the minute. So if you have a VM powered on for a minute, that is all you're going to be charged for. The minute that you power it off, then your charges will cease. So that is another really compelling reason why customers like to have Azure as a place to host their virtual machines, because it gives them this capability of potentially reducing their costs if they can manage the infrastructure and have that being powered down when it's not in use. So those are really just some of the top of mind reasons of why customers like to deploy Citrix on Azure. So back to you, Alex.
Great, thanks Tom. So what we want to do is break this down into two conversations to really give you some pointers around how we can take this into our and your customer bases as well. So we're not going to go into depth on this. This is just some ideas you can talk to, and then obviously engage the Citrix or the Microsoft sales teams or the contacts that you have within Citrix and Microsoft to really dig into these topics a little bit further. So the first topic we have is, how can we go and talk to a current Azure customer around the Zen App and Zen Desktop service? What is it that really compels them to take some of their infrastructure and use Zen App and Zen Desktop to deliver it back? What we typically hear from customers is they're moving into Azure, but they really want to help to simplify and integrate app delivery from Azure. They want to have single points of access. One of the things we give you with the Zen App and Zen Desktop service is Storefront or Workspace Manager, to be able to go and get access to all your apps and your desktops from a single access point, a single portal almost, from any device the user chooses to use it from. And obviously if we start to move those apps and potentially also those desktops up into Azure, we want to be able to consume those applications and desktops very simply back from Azure. Again, linked to that as well, we want to give a great experience for those users and not only have those apps and desktops sat near to the user, but have them delivered across to the user, regardless of whether they're on 3G, 4G, Wi-Fi, office broadband or anything else. Give them a great user experience. And then kind of leading on from there, accessing the apps and desktops from any location. I think we're all very familiar with the way that work is changing, the way that users are logging in from anywhere and any device. And again, we can give you that great user experience, but we can give it from any device and equally have you connected into those apps and desktops sat in Azure from anywhere you want. Equally, when you talk about VMware Workspace ONE or AWS workspaces with your customers, we've got a compelling solutions already in place for those customers that is market leading, that has the solutions jointly with Azure. So we've got the proof points, we've got the customers there already that can help to make sure that customers getting the best experience in their Azure consumption and also getting the best app and desktop experience they could possibly have. And equally give you business continuity via Azure. So we can start to span across Azure locations. We can give you the ability to go and choose where you want to consume, again, as we talked about earlier, to give you the best experience. So we continue to give the users that great user experience as well. Plus, for a non-Citrix customer, it's really easy to go and pick up the Zen App and Zen Desktop. They just go and buy the Zen App and Zen Desktop service or the Workspace service. And then there's easy consumable packages you can go and deploy to make sure this works for your users, of which there are other technical sessions that are part of this series as well to tell you how to actually go and deploy Zen App and Zen Desktop into Azure. So even then, it's very simple for you to sell these solutions into this customer scenario to make sure the customer gets the benefits, but also to make sure the customer gets the benefits very, very simply and very, very quickly because of the work we've jointly done as two businesses. So really to summarise, we're looking there at a current Azure customer, but really about helping them, in this instance, get those apps back from Azure that are already there, or help them move those apps, those current business applications up into Azure as well. Equally, to help them maybe change their desktop strategy. So we've got another session as part of this series around how we run Windows 10, and we'll leave a lot of that topic for that session as well. But equally, helping to provide desktop as a service from Azure is a big play that we can help you together as Citrix and Microsoft to take into your customers to mobilize, to reduce the costs of management as well for those Windows 10 deployments that they may have or may be moving towards as we go into the rest of 2018 and 2019 as well. And equally, there's another session we're running on that as part of this series as well. So that's a current Azure customer. Tom, what about a current Citrix customer?
Yeah, so in the same vein, what kind of things to listen for? And this is based upon real customer conversations that we've had. And typically they say at least one of these things that is a good start for a conversation to look at why a customer should be moving their Citrix workloads onto Azure. So one of the first things that we often hear is, I've got a Citrix deployment on premises and it's costing me X. I'm looking to optimize, or really I'm just looking to reduce my costs. How can Azure help me to do that? We also have a lot of customers that say, we are a cloud-first organization. We have a cloud-first strategy. But what does that mean? How are they doing that? What workloads are they looking at? What applications are they thinking about migrating? Help them to drive that towards moving a Citrix project into Azure. We also hear we're moving out of our data center. We're trying to reduce costs. We're a finance organization, for example. We don't manage data centers. So we're trying to reduce our data center footprint and start consuming more services out of Azure. And obviously, a Citrix deployment on premises takes up a lot of infrastructure. So that's a quite easy and compelling workload to move into Azure. We also hear, I'm an Office 365 user, or we use Office 365 within our organization. Now that means they've already got their identities within the cloud. They are already used to a sort of consumption-based model for Office. And if they're using the productivity suite from the cloud, then it makes sense to have their desktops or other applications located in similar regions to Office 365. So again, another straightforward, simple reason as to why their Citrix workload should go into Azure. And also we hear that customers are sort of based upon Microsoft, so they have Microsoft products throughout their organization, and moving them to Azure is their next logical step on their roadmap internally. And as we know, XenApp 6.5, a very stable product. It's used extensively throughout the industry, but it's going end of life. So there's another reason to start the conversation about what you're going to do in that situation. Upgrade to a different version of Citrix, potentially move that into Azure as well. And then the same thing applies. We've got Windows 2008 Server or Windows 7. We need to do something with these. How are we going to do that? Can we fix those problems by moving them into Azure? Well, absolutely. Let's help you to do so. So as Alex mentioned, it's the same things to be listening out for, and then the same things to move that conversation forward. XenApp, Zen Desktop, on top of Azure IaaS services will effectively answer all of those questions and help that customer in that migration from on-prem into Azure. So back to you, Alex.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Tom. And I just wanted to kind of add there, we've got the tools, we've got the cost calculator. You can see the link there at the bottom that can be used, and there's loads more information on these solutions. We didn't want to go into depth today because it's just really to give you all an idea of what we can achieve together. What we suggest is going forwards, please reach out to your Citrix and Microsoft reps. Hopefully this has given you a taster of the solutions available from Azure, and there's more detail to be had through our joint enablement programs, of which this is part of those programs as well. So please feel free to continue your learning, to reach out to your Citrix and Microsoft contacts so we can expand on this conversation. Tom, is there any closing comments from you before we close today's session?
Not really, just to repeat what you've just said. There's a whole load of information within both organizations, and both are willing and able to assist partners and customers directly or jointly. There's a lot of information and a lot of resource that Microsoft is willing to put down to drive these kinds of projects forward. So any questions, any assistance, just reach out.
Thanks, Tom. And again, just to reiterate again, loads more information. Appreciate the time you've taken today to watch this short session on Citrix and Azure. But please continue your journey, continue to reach out to your Citrix contacts, and continue to have these conversations with your customers. So thank you very much for your time from Tom and myself, and we look forward to hearing from you all soon. Thank you.